An estimated 5,000 migrants are camped out at the French port of Calais near the entrance to the Channel Tunnel, desperate to make it to the UK. As Prime Minister David Cameron tries to contain the escalating migrant crisis, the issue of immigration is becoming more potent in the debate about Britain's place in Europe. Joining me to discuss this is Philip Stevens, our chief political commentator. So Philip, we've had the second Cobra Emergency Committee meeting in a week today. What's the government doing about this?
Well, fresh from his trip to Asia, David Cameron's clearly in something must be done mode. The trouble is, the government doesn't quite know what that something is. I mean, what we have here are two crises, really. One, despite the inconvenience for trucks and for holidaymakers, is the relatively small crisis centred around Calais, where 5,000 immigrants are trying to get across the channel, about 5,000. And then there's the big crisis, and that's the crisis, the European crisis, where literally hundreds of thousands of refugees from war in Syria, from poverty and war in East Africa, are trying to come to Europe. And only really a small proportion of those make it to Calais, let alone to Dover.
And 5,000 is not actually that many in the context of annual migration to the UK anyway, is it?
No, well, net migration, I think, despite David Cameron's strictures and attempts to get it down, is about 250,000 a year it's been running at in recent years. And 5,000 isn't a big number.
So why all the political fuss?
Well, I think that the political fuss is there because the government doesn't have control. And one of the problems with this sort of migration is not the numbers, but the sense that people get that the government can't control things. And it can't at the moment because it's addressing symptoms rather than causes, as it were. So it's not big in the great scheme of things. Germany's been taking 40,000 or more every year. Sweden something around the same. So it's small, but it's holiday season. People are trying to get off to France and Italy. The trucks are building up on the motorway. So, and the papers have got nothing else to write about, or TV, nothing else to broadcast about.
And UKIP is making a lot of fuss about this, isn't it? They seem to see an opportunity here to cause some trouble.
Yes, I think the sort of anti-immigrant right across Europe has been making a lot of capital out of this through this year, and UKIP see an opportunity here, having been, if you like, elbowed out a little bit out of the general election story this year. They see a way. And, you know, frankly, this government, like many in Europe, aren't really prepared to face down the populists on the right and talk about, put this thing in perspective. I mean, a lot of these people are not coming here to take benefits. They don't know about in-work benefits. The great majority of them, many of them highly educated, you know, we see interviewed night by night Syrian dentists and electricians and engineers and whatever. They're coming to work if they can. So I think across Europe, a structure that said, look, we're going to process these people sensibly. We will send back those who are just simply economic migrants from safe areas, but the rest we will invite into our countries, and if you like, you know, to put it crudely, put them to work. That's what we should be doing.
And wasn't that exactly the sort of solution Britain rejected when the EU discussed quotas for migrants earlier in the year?
It did reject it. It rejected any participation in the quotas, but there's an irony here. Back in the 1990s, when the former Yugoslavia was falling apart literally under the weight of civil war, a great proportion of those migrants were coming to Britain. And Britain went to Europe and said, let's have a quota system. Let's share out all these migrants across. And of course, the other countries then said, no, 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 you can deal with it. Now the boot is on the other foot, as it were, and we're backing out. But sensibly, no country in Europe can deal with this problem. I mean, the interesting thing is, at the moment, is how reliant we are on France.
How do you think it's going to develop, Philip? I mean, what do you think that this story will turn into over the summer?
Well, I think it will probably quieten down. I think they will improve the security, and I think the misery, if you like, of the refugees at Calais might grow to an extent that the influx slows somewhat. But at some point, provision is going to have to be made for these people. You can't send refugees back to Syria, to Eritrea or to Somalia, the war-torn areas there. So Europe and Britain is going to have to find a practical way of sorting this out. And fences, frankly, just don't do it.
So a difficult summer challenge for the Prime Minister. Philip Stevens, thank you very much.
Thank you.